What's up, awesome people? Today is going to be tutorial day and I am going to talk about drones. So I've been flying drones for about close to 2 years and I thought it's a good time to finally gather all my thoughts and my top tips that I've learned throughout these 2 years and shared with you guys on how to get that juicy cinematic drone footage. So let's roll on. Tip number 1, and that is to plan your shots before you actually put your drone up in the air. Now you've probably heard this before or not, but drone batteries, they're just not good. And they range about from 12 minutes to about 20 over minutes, so that doesn't leave you with a lot of time, and planning is extremely crucial. I would suggest about 1 to 2 key shots at least before you fly, whether or not you can do it before your travels or you can do it on location before you actually fly the drone. And once you have captured those 1 to 2 important shots that you have planned, you can improvise and think on the spot like different angles that you can capture, but the key thing is again to plan as much as possible so that you maximize the flight time that you have with your drone. Okay, moving on to tip number 2, and that is to analyze your surroundings and know your drone bearings. To know if there are like potential hazards for your drones. For example, buildings or whatnot, anything that could cause your drone to crash, especially power lines and tree branches, because they are really hard to detect even if your drone sensors are really awesome. Case example, I actually crashed my drone last year when I was in Finland. I was flying sideways and I kind of lost the bearing of my drone. I didn't know where my drone was, but I just wanted to do like a nice side profile shot of these houses, and I didn't take notice that there were trees at the sides and I eventually crashed it. So my tip would be to make sure before you do such moves like flying sideways or flying backwards is to use the drone camera to scan sideways or backwards to make sure that it's clear, especially if you're not that high up in the sky. Oh yes, and I just wanted to add on another point, and that is to have a visual line of sight to your drone, which basically means to physically see where your drone is and where is it flying and all that stuff. And with this, it's just impossible to crash. And I really do highly recommend this, especially to beginner drone pilots.
Steady. You've done this all the time.
Alright, tip number 3 would be to adjust the sensitivity of your gimbal. Now when you take your drone straight out of the box, the controls are very sensitive to the touch, and when you do like slight adjustments and then you want to just put it to a stop, the movements are very quick, and then when you let go of the controls, it would just stop abruptly. And what you want to have are like slow gradual movements that come to a stop, and that usually feels more cinematic. And what you want to do is to go into your gimbal settings and change the gimbal smoothness. Alright, so I'm going to tap on the top right hand corner with the 3 dots and then tap onto the gimbal icon at the bottom. Go to advanced settings, and there you can see you can adjust your gimbal. Max gimbal pitch speed, I set it at 10, and then gimbal pitch smoothness, I set it at 23, so it's not too fast, and the smoothness of the gimbal is going to be smooth, right? I'm gonna tap on the top icon, the drone icon, go all the way down. Advanced settings, EXP. Okay, I'm not too sure what all of these are, but these are the settings that I use, so you can just copy it down. And basically it would smoothen out your turns left and right, and there you go. These are the gimbal settings that would help you achieve a lot more smoother footage. On to tip number 4, and that is composition. Now composition is a universal element whether you're into photography or videography, or whether or not you're using what kind of cameras. And when you have good composition, you don't need to have crazy drone maneuvers. Like just simple drone movements with good composition just always makes up for a very good aesthetically pleasing viewing experience. And when it comes to composition, it's always about the usual rule of thirds and just having a few key visual elements in your shots. You don't want it to be overcrowded with too many things going on. And before you even move on to more complicated drone maneuvers, having good composition will always make up for good cinematic drone footage. Now that you're done with composition, let's move on to the more exciting stuff, and that is cinematic drone movements. Now there's so many varieties and types of drone movements that you can shoot, so I won't be able to explain all of it. I'll be linking a video down in the description for you guys to check out for a more in-depth look into that, but here are some of my favorite movements that I tend to use quite often. Starting with the most simple yet effective move, the push-in, rising push-in reveal, droney or rising pullback, push-in tilt down, The orbit, which is one drone move that I use a lot. It showcases the surroundings of a subject that you're tracking, and it's highly dynamic, with the background constantly changing, giving us that parallax effect. Profile tracking, rising top-down shot, rising swirling top-down shot, tracking top-down shot. Now on to the next tip, and that is to use ND filters. Now I'll be very honest with you guys. For the past 2 years or so, I have never really bothered about putting ND filters onto my drone. I found it to be too much of a hassle. And yes, I do put it on my main cameras for, a couple of times, but not for my drones because I just want to make it simple. Until recently, Polar Pro contacted me to try out some of the ND filters for drones, and I was like, yeah, for sure, man. I got this Cinema series. I mean, look at the branding and packaging. It is on point, but besides the case, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but basically ND filters are like sunglasses to your lenses or cameras. They cut out light that's reaching the camera sensor, and the reason why you want to be doing this is to have the smooth and natural looking motion blur in your footage, and this can be achieved by having your shutter speed to be double of your frame rate, which in most cases is going to be 1/50th for the shutter speed. Now in broad daylight, this is definitely not usable. It's going to be too bright, and that is where the ND filters come in. So in my honest opinion, I feel that ND filters are definitely not like a make or break thing for capturing great footage. Again, the two main things to do that is going to be composition and drone movements. If you really do want to take your drone cinematography to the next level, then I feel that ND filters are really great, especially if you tend to fly low to the ground where there's a lot of motion. Having motion blur to that really helps to elevate your production game for your drone. On to tip number 7, and if you want to achieve that sense of scale that your location has, you're gonna wanna fly far. Now flying far will definitely give your viewers that overall sense of location and the vastness of the landscape, but there's a caveat to it, and that is the higher you fly up, the less motion you're going to get in your footage. So remember that there's a balance between flying really far to get a sense of location and also flying really way too high up until there's no sense of motion, and you want to make sure that it's in balance, which kind of leads us to the next point, which is to fly close to the ground. Now flying far it's easy, right? But flying close to the ground, definitely gonna be a bit more risky, so make sure that you are not too near to the ground that you might hit something. But when you fly close to the ground, you're gonna introduce a lot more movement and motion into your shot, and that's gonna make it look a lot more it's gonna look so good. And another thing you can do is if you want to be like Sam Coder, you can fly through really tight and small spaces, although it's gonna be very risky, but if you get it right, the results are going to be mind-blowing. Alright, so I just wanted to add on again on another additional tip, and that is to fly slow. Now this depends on what kind of shots that you want to achieve and also what kind of environment that you are in. In a situation where you're in really tight spaces, of course you cannot fly fast or go crazy. And also when you fly slow, you will be able to achieve more control over your movements. Overall, just slow movements do help you to translate into a more cinematic footage. I know I've been abusing the word cinematic, but sometimes again, flying slow allows you to have that more calming feel that you want in your footage rather than going fast. Alright, on to tip number 9, and that is to do longer flight paths. What I mean by longer flight paths is basically you want to do smooth, long, continuous takes of a certain drone movement, and you don't want to be adjusting left and right, up and down during this take. It has to be really smooth and continuous, and I would say usually the duration would last about 30 seconds to a minute and a half, depending on what you're shooting. The longer the better, so that you have more options in post. And what you can do with these long takes in editing is that you can do speed ramps, and speed ramps usually make for a very interesting edit and post. It's cool. Now we are on to our very final tip, and that is to cut out all of the unnecessary drone jerks, movements, adjustments. Cut that all out, because if you leave that in your edit or footage or video, then it's going to look very amateurish. to have those adjustments going on. Best way to do it is really to cut all those out and put in the best and smoothest parts of your footage, and it's just going to look a lot better. So cut out all the fat, cut it out, and leave the best parts in. And yes, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. I genuinely hope that you found these tips useful, whether or not you're a drone owner or you're looking to buy a drone. And if you did find it useful, you can give this video a thumbs up. It really helps in supporting what I do. And yes, don't forget to subscribe and join in the ride for more videos like this. And I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.